Okay, in section 2.1, we talked about the formal limit process. I know you love doing all that. In section 2, we talked about the shortcut process. So section 3, we're going to focus on the product and quotient rules. So I went ahead and did the warm up for you. I will post this, of course, as Saul's version on Canvas, but I wanted to go ahead and do that with you. You can see what they are. Pretty straightforward. One thing you might want to work on is simplifying or rewriting them before you derive them. So that's always a good little hint. Okay, now recall from section 2.2 that we can use the sum and difference rule for derivatives to take the derivative of a function one term at a time. So for example, we have f of t equals 4t to the third minus 3t plus 6. Well, when I derive that, I'm going to get 12t to the second minus 3. However, this rule does not apply for multiplication or division of expressions. So, in other words, if h of x equals f prime or f of x g of x, then h prime of x does not equal f prime of x g of x. So make a mental note of that. I'm going to highlight that for you. You know me, I like to color. All right. So the product rule. The product of two different functions, f and g, is itself differentiable. So the derivative in terms of x of f of x, g of x is as follows. It is f prime of x, g of x, plus f of x, g prime of x. So in other words, we derive f times g of x plus f of x times g prime of x. Now, we can do that with the following example. I'll actually go about this next example both ways so you see how they work. All right. Now, using the product rule, I know that f of x, and I'm going to go ahead and do this over here. So f of x equals 3x minus 2x squared, and f prime of x equals 3 minus 4x from what you saw there. Now g of x is going to equal 5 plus 4x, and then g prime of x equals, 4. So according to this, h prime of x is going to be as follows. F prime of x, which is, and we got f prime of x, g of x, plus f of x, g prime of x. All right, so all I have to do is plug these components in. It would be 3 minus 4x, and then g of x is going to be 5 plus 4x, plus f of x, which is 3x minus 2x squared, and then g prime of x is just simply 4. All right, now, when you do all that stuff, we're going to end up getting, and it's going to be kind of a long one. I'm going to pause this for a moment, and I'll work it out so you don't have to see me work the whole. Okay, when we're done with all the algebra, we end up with h prime of x using the product rule. We end up with 15 plus 4x minus 24x squared. Now, one thing I want to show you is if you did it the other way, if you went ahead and simplified and multiplied both of these quantities together, you would get h of x equals 15x plus 2x squared minus 8x to the third, which when you do h prime of x, you'll get 15 plus 4x minus 24x squared. So they both end up being the same. So I wanted to pause that for a moment. Instead of you watching me do the algebra, just show you what the algebra is. Y'all know how to do the algebra, so I'm trying to save you some video time. Okay, now, once again, product rule is, and I'll pause this again. All right, so we'll go ahead and derive this. Derive the first term, derivative of x is just simply 1 times the sine of x. Now, we haven't really, or you have seen these before, but I'm going to go ahead and go over this with you again. plus x times the derivative of x is cosine of x. So it's going to be sine of x plus x cosine of x. All right, that's that example. Now 3 is the same thing. It's going to take several steps. So y prime equals derivative of the first term is just simply 2 cosine of x, stays the same, and then plus the derivative, the first term times the derivative of cosine. Derivative of cosine, remember, is negative sine of x minus 2 sine of x. So, I'm sorry. I made a brain fart, so let's go back and fix that. I forgot to derive sine of x, which is 2 cosine of x. So, now here's what's going to happen. These two right here are going to cross out. So I'm going to be left with negative 2x sine of x. So negative 2x sine of x. All right. So we got that. And that's the product rule. Now the quotient rule. I'm going to pause for a moment. All right. So the derivative using quotient rule is g of x, when the derivative in terms of x of f of x over g of x is g of x f prime of x minus f of x g prime of x all over g of x squared. Now there's a little memory thing we'll show you here in just a moment, but let me go ahead and do the first example right here. Okay, I went ahead and separated out. F of x is 5x minus 2, and f prime of x is 5 from that. G of x is x squared plus 1, and then g prime of x is 2x. So that way, all I have to do is plug in these components into that expression right there. So y prime is going to equal, according to this, g of x, which is 2x, and then f prime of x is 5, minus f of x, which is 5x minus 2, and g prime of x, which is 2x. And that's all over x squared plus 1 squared. All right, now that's going to give me 10. Now this right here is going to give me 10x minus, and then I distribute the 2x, so it's going to be 10x squared minus makes that plus 4x all over, and then x squared plus 1 squared. And then we get the algebra here, we simplify that, and we get 14x minus 10x squared all over x squared plus 1 squared. Now I can leave it at that. I could probably simplify it down further. Don't worry about that right now. Just simply leave it like that, and it's going to be good to go. All right. Now, there we go. Okay. Now, for the next one, there's going to be cases when you're going to have a problem where you're going to have to kind of rearrange it or make it a little bit easier to work with for you, so that way it is, easier to work with. So I have 3 minus 1 over x. Now that looks hideous right there. All over x plus 5. Now we want to get rid of this x on the bottom, so we're going to multiply both the top and the bottom by x. So I'm going to multiply x times 3 minus 1 over x, and then x times x plus 5. That doesn't change the value of the equation. It just makes it easier to work with. So then that's going to give me 3x minus 1 all over x squared plus 5x. All right. So then we got f of x equals 3x minus 1. So f prime of x is going to be 3, because you derive that. G of x equals x squared plus 5x So that means that g prime of x equals 2x plus 5. All right, and then from there, you just plug in, and I'll pause this while. So we end up with this. We end up with x squared plus 5x times 3 minus 3x minus 1 times 2x plus 5 all over x squared plus 5x quantity squared. Now that can be simplified further. We're not going to worry about that right now. If this was on an AP test, you just simply leave it like that and you'd be good to go. So we're just going to leave it like that for the time being because I want you to be able to focus on the calculus of it and not worry about the algebra because the algebra can make a lot of mistakes on it. So, all right, now let's review a little bit. We got the product rule, which is f prime of x g of x plus f of x g prime of x. That's the product rule. And the quotient rule is, and I want to make sure I'm looking at my notes, so I make sure I write it down correctly. Okay, so it's going to be g of x f prime of x minus f of x g prime of x all over g of x squared. And the mnemonic device is for the product rule 1d2 plus 2d1, where 1 is the top term, or 1 is the first term and 2 is the second term. So basically 1 times the derivative of the second plus 2 times the derivative of first, or actually vice versa, but you get the idea of how that works. You can use it if you want to. It's entirely up to you. All right. Now, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to pause this and we're going to start with the second part of this in just a moment. You can check out part 2.